This is a former Ukrainian position, once far in the rear of Ukrainian lines, now taken by Russian troops. Assault troops clearing the area first reported this find. Vials filled with an unknown substance. It is tagged, bagged, and transported for testing.
This year we have discovered 2 caches with munitions intended for drone strikes on Russian positions. These munitions were a mix of chloropicrin and plastic explosives to maximize the area of effect. Chloropicrin leads to severe irritation of the epiretinal membrane in the eyes, the respiratory system, and causes suffocation up to and including death. Competent authorities track and document every attempt by the Ukrainian army to use chemical weapons.
Chloropicrin, first used by German troops during World War I, is banned in war by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Yet, who is to notice? There are no yellow clouds or characteristic burns left on the bodies of those killed to tell what happened. No OPCW inspector would risk trying to get this close to the front lines. And Ukraine has taken advantage of this, admit Ukrainian soldiers.
A drone would fly over to Russian positions and drop these capsules. The smoke would blow back towards us. Though it wasn't really smoke. It's hard to describe. It was like dust. The boys said they couldn't open their eyes, and it was impossible to breathe, even though very little drifted back to them. They said they couldn't describe the smell. It wasn't smoke, it was sweet, sort of sickly sweet.
Russian law enforcement goes to great lengths to ensure that every case is documented. The FSB promises everyone who is responsible for chemical weapons attacks will be found and will face justice. It is, however, a sign of growing desperation amongst Ukrainian troops. Russian forces are advancing at their quickest pace in 3 years, 10 to 20 square kilometers a day. And Ukrainian forces are growing desperate, even erratic.
What will protect us from this evil? All this time or all this way? Which support package? Which missiles? Will nuclear weapons be returned to us? Let's get our nuclear weapons back. Or they should give us a package of long-range missiles in such a quantity that we can stop Russia. I'm not sure about that, although it would definitely help. On the other hand, what kind of missiles can stop Russia's nuclear missiles? This is a rhetorical question. In other words, let's do this. Give us back nuclear weapons. Give us strong rocket launchers. Partners, help us finance an army of millions and send our contingents to those areas of our country where we want maximum stability of the situation and for people to have peace of mind.
But while nuclear weapons may be a pipe dream, these ad hoc labs, the sort that drug dealers might use to synthesize methamphetamine, are perfectly capable of brewing toxic chemicals with which to try and stall or slow Russia's armies. And the OPCW conventions and prohibitions be damned.
From the point of view of the specific toxicological properties of chloropicrin, I would say that its use in such ammunition is very limited. The fact is that in an open space, in a field, on the street, the explosion of such ammunition cannot create serious concentrations for humans. Although, of course, everyone who is close will experience this irritation of the mucous membranes of the eyes and the nose, and it will cause lacrimation, sometimes sneezing, coughing, but nothing more. In principle, such a device cannot create serious consequences, but this munition can be very effective in enclosed spaces, cinemas, schools, or residential premises. And if they were supposed to be dropped from drones, they were designed to cause damage to the personnel of our units, which are located in underground shelters. The rupture of such ammunition can really pose a threat to the life and health of our soldiers. Importantly, chloropicrin is not very toxic, but when it is distributed indoors, the issue of exposure arises. Exposure is the time spent by a person in an atmosphere contaminated with toxic substances. And when this stay is long enough, then of course chloropicrin will not only have an irritating effect, but leads to pulmonary edema, in fact death from suffocation. And in this sense, past worldwide practice confirms that such substances, which seem to temporarily disable people, are actually lethal substances with a fatal outcome. There is some analogy, it seems to me, between the use of chloropicrin by the Ukrainian armed forces today to manufacture such explosive devices. Because in 1942, Fascist Germany and the armed forces of Fascist Germany faced the resistance of the underground in Odessa. The underground fighters hid in the Odessa catacombs and caused serious damage to the Germans and Romanians who occupied this territory. At a certain point, when the fascists managed to find out that the underground were in these catacombs, they used suffocating substances of a similar effect. I think there is an analogy here. I had the opportunity to look at archived data, especially the stories of those people who were exposed to these substances. And I came to the conclusion that firstly, of course, there were quite a lot of facts about the use of irritating substances. People also started tearing up, coughing, and vomiting. It also led to irritation on the skin. I was very surprised by the story that some objects were stained with some oily substance, and the person who took them with his hands received very characteristic skin burns. It is unclear where they got it from. After all, it is so exotic. Moreover, there were several stories with a fairly detailed description of the symptoms with obvious signs of psychotropic drugs. Once or twice, our special services managed to find hiding places where psychotropic drugs such as Bezet were located. This is a well-known psychotropic drug that has been put into service, by the way, in the U.S. Army and in some NATO countries. Therefore, its appearance on the front line is not an accident. Still, there may be some logical connection here. From the point of view of international law, the actions of the Ukrainian armed forces are a gross violation of the International Convention on the Prohibition of the Use, Production, and Storage of Toxic Substances. It is enough to look at the first article, which says that every state that has signed the convention is obliged never to use, produce, or investigate such substances in any form. Another point in the same article is that other states should not be encouraged or supported in the use of chemical warfare agents. And there's even a fifth paragraph of this article. In my opinion, it is also very revealing. Just in relation to substances of irritating effect, where it says that police methods to combat demonstrators cannot be used in military conditions. This is also very important. The last point is, it seems to me, such a clear final point, which in no way allows Ukraine to justify the use or attempt to use these substances on the combat front.